everybody to the Single on Stilettos Show. I'm Suzanne Oshima, and I'm a matchmaker and dating coach at Dream Bachelor and Bachelorette, and I'm also the founder of Single on Stilettos. Today we have on our show Duana Welch, and she's the author of Love Factually, 10 Proven Steps from I Wish to I Do. And I'm so excited to have her here today because today we're talking about finding love by not looking for love, fact or fiction. But before we jump into this topic, Duana, I would love for you to tell our audience a little bit about you and how you came up with this concept of the book, Love Factually.
Hi, Suzanne. Thanks so much. Yeah, I am a nerd. I've been a lifelong nerd, and I have a PhD in nerdology. No, it's actually in psychology. But what happened to me was I went through a lot of pain. My education and my finely tuned brain did not protect me. And I found myself thinking, well, what the heck, what do I need to do? It turned out that I was buying into a lot of our current cultural mythology that was just flat out wrong. And so I thought, well, maybe there's somebody else who studied this and figured out the actual answers scientifically. And so that's my whole deal, is making science accessible to everyone so that they don't have to suffer like I did. And it did work for me. I applied it all. I'm very happily married, and it works for my clients, and I'd like it to work for everyone.
Awesome. Okay, so let's jump into this. So is it fact or fiction that you can find love by not looking for love? Or do you have to really look for love? So which is it?
So, okay, the way you worded the question, I'm going to have to say yes. So you can find love by not looking for it, but that's the exception to the rule. By and large, once you're out of college or high school or someplace rife with the, available and single, once you're out of those environments where you're kind of bombarded by single people, then there is a word for people who aren't actively looking, and that word is single. And so now, but that's not invariably true. There are people who luck out and just happen to run into their sweetie pie in the subway or on the street or in a cafe or whatever. And it's because of those people that the rest of us think we shouldn't be looking.
So you're saying as we get older and you're not put in so many of those social situations where everybody's single, is that you do have to be more proactive in finding love?
You absolutely do. So I'm just going to use myself as an example.
Okay.
When I was in my 30s, I was single with a child, and my child had a special need, so not an easy, person to find a stepdad for. I was running a PR firm from my house, and so, what were the odds that Mr. Right was just going to kind of roll right into my hood and say, hey, knock, 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 I know you have no time for dating, so I'm just going to marry you. Is that all right? So I knew that wasn't going to happen, but the thing is, I knew that wasn't going to happen. It's amazing to me how many women are living their lives as if that is going to happen. And then 8 or 10 years go by of not looking, and they still are telling themselves, if I start looking, that will hurt my chances of finding love. That's superstition. That's not helpful at all. A lot of people do feel this superstition. If I look for it, it will never happen. Actually, statistically, scientifically, if you look for it, that's when it will happen. I did, people are constantly telling me how lucky I am to have my husband, and I am. I'm very lucky, but it was luck that I really worked at. It's not like he just happened in my life. I mean, once you find the right partner, you feel like, oh my God, this is the luckiest thing. But the fact is, a lot of elbow grease went into that luck.
So can I ask how you met your husband? Because you were so isolated at home. You're absolutely right. If you're working from home, he's not going to come knocking at your door. And even if he did, you would think he was a weirdo. But
yeah.
so how did you meet your husband, if you don't mind sharing with our audience?
I don't mind sharing that information. So I, just like a good fisherman, I cast multiple lines into the internet. And I dated on 3 different dating sites at once. And I met good men at every single one of them, but I met the love of my life on eHarmony.
Interesting. And ladies, what's interesting? She actually writes for eHarmony too. So
Yeah, I do, but that didn't happen till years and years after he and I were married. Isn't that funny?
That's funny. Well, and I just want to say something because I completely agree with you 110%. About you have to be proactive in finding love, because I always use this as an example with women, because I live in New York City. Most of my audience knows that I live in New York City. And for my matchmaking business, I interview women all the time and to see if they're matches for my male clients. And one of the things that I'll ask them is, well, what are you doing to meet the right man? I mean, it's great you came to see me, but matchmaking is a long process. So it's not going to happen right away. So I always try to make sure women are doing other things. And it's always interesting to me because I find New York women are so much the go-getters. They'll do anything to get the right job. But when it comes to finding love, I found that they were always saying one or two things. And I'm like, why are you only doing one or two things? And it's, even if you're not working from home, it's not just going to miraculously happen, right? And
absolutely. In fact, I think in your environment there in New York City, it's so densely populated that people create space bubbles around themselves and they're hesitant to interact with people they don't already know. And so it's actually, ironically, a little harder to meet people in some ways.
Right, and I think some people can be standoffish, but what I always say to women is this, and I always try to use analogies so it makes people understand what I'm trying to say. If you lost your job today, you would do everything in your power to find a new job. You would go online, you would contact headhunters, you would network, you would call old bosses, whatever it was. So you would do a whole myriad of things. When it comes to finding love, why are you just going out maybe once a week and maybe doing online dating? You need to do a whole host of things to meet the right man because, like Duana said, if you do all these things, then you're more likely to meet him. I like what you said. You said you cast a wide net, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what's going to bring you, quote unquote, luck in meeting the right man. I mean, of course, you could luckily, meet someone just walking down the street, and that could happen.
It could.
It could. But you have to be open for it. Because I will tell you this, and for those of you that have been following me for a long time, I talk about this a lot, is we're all so closed off from everybody in our day-to-day lives that we go to work, we walk down the street, we don't notice things, we don't talk to people. You need to talk to everybody and anybody, not just men that you're interested in, everybody and anybody, because it opens you up and it makes you more approachable to everybody. And when you start doing that, the right man will see that you're more approachable and he's more likely to approach you. Because I hear all too often from women that women will say to me, oh, men never approach me. And I don't know what's wrong. And it's because you're closed off. There's some sort of thing that's saying, don't approach me.
You are, as we say here, preaching to the choir, girlfriend. So I agree with everything you just said, and I will tell you that from a scientific standpoint, most men overestimate a woman's sexual interest in them. So if you aren't getting approached, it's because you are showing that you're closed off. So I'm going to tell you the single biggest way, and this is from research in many societies around the world. I'm going to tell you the single biggest way to get a man to notice you and come over and talk to you.
Okay, tell us.
Look them directly in the eye and give them a big smile. The kind where your eyes crinkle, look away, and then do it again.
And Duana, this is interesting because they're hearing it from you, and my audience knows that not only do I say it, but every single one of my male experts says the exact same thing. And ladies, I know you've heard this 100 times, but I can't tell you how many of my male clients and men that I've interviewed have said they need those two signs from you to know that it's okay to approach you.
That is universal man bait. And if you're not doing it, it's universal man repellent.
Exactly. Yeah. And you may have to do it twice because sometimes men are a little dense or they're afraid of rejection, so they need to be doubly sure that it's okay to approach you, because you have to remember they take a lot of abuse sometimes from women when they approach and they get rejected. So they have to be somewhat sure. So don't be afraid to do it twice.
Yes, or even more. Actually, in studies of these things by sociologists who went to bars, wasn't their job just very hard? They had to go to bars. They found that women who got a man to approach did this many, many times every hour to the same guy, but it worked. So, when I said I met my husband online, I met him online, but I actually did a lot of other stuff. I did everything I could. I remember there was one guy who was really, really irate with me because he figured out that I had gone on a date before our date, and I had gone on a date after our date. What I was doing is I was setting up at this one restaurant, and I had dates pretty much on the hour every hour. And he figured this out. I'm not sure how he did it, but he did. And he was really quite torqued at me, actually. And I just let him know, you know what, buddy? This is none of your business. I am interviewing for the most important job that's available in my whole life. And I am single. I'm not your girlfriend. I'm not your wife. We're not engaged. It's not your business. Back off. And he did what men do. He wanted me more.
And it's funny. He was probably mad because it's what some men will do, and he was shocked that a woman was actually doing it.
Maybe that was it. Maybe he had a control issue. I'll never know because we didn't wind up hitting it off for other reasons besides that. But in general, women are also afraid to seem as if they are busy. Once they do start looking, you know what? I'm sorry, but if I told you I'd have to kill you is a funny way to say this isn't your business. Another thing you can say is, oh, you know what? We're not really dating yet, and I don't think you want to hear about the other people I'm dating. Women are terrified to say that, but what men hear is, she's a catch, I better move in.
That's interesting that you say that. That's a really good point. Well, good. These have been great points for the ladies. So, ladies, you need to be more proactive. Stop sitting around and waiting for Mr. Right to show up. He's not going to just show up. He could, but you could be waiting around till I don't even know. So, anyways, okay. So, Duana, tell our audience how they can find you and where they can find your book.
Well, I wish life was like a Disney film where my true prince will come someday, but it's not. So that's why we have Love Factually. You can find my book and find me at www.lovefactually.co. That's lovefactually.co, not .com. If you go to .com, I don't even know where you're going to end up, but it's not my book. So lovefactually.co, and make sure you get the free chapter. There's lots of information about the book, but the big thing is make sure you get that free chapter. Then you get free information, and you see if you want the book. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us on the Single and Stiletto Show. Our show is available in both video format and podcast format. If you'd like to view the videos, you can go to singleandstilettos.com. And if you'd like to get the podcast, you can download it from iTunes. And if you would like to really meet the right man and know the 65 best places to meet him, you can check out our ebook, The Secrets on Where to Meet Men. And I actually give that tip that Duana talked about smiling and making eye contact, plus a bunch of other tips on how to get a man's attention in the book. So you can click here on the video, or you can go to singleandstilettos.com.